Some cities are fighting the ocean, others are slowly giving up. And the question is no longer whether sea levels will rise. The question is simpler and more uncomfortable: who gets saved and who doesn't? Because right now, as water keeps creeping higher, the world is making quiet decisions about which places are worth protecting and which ones are allowed to disappear. Let's start with a city that refuses to sink quietly: Miami. Miami is one of the most vulnerable cities in the United States. It sits on porous limestone. Water doesn't just rise from the ocean, it comes up from the ground. On sunny days, streets flood without a storm. Parking garages fill with salt water. Pumps work even when the sky is clear. And yet, Miami is still here, not because the water stopped, but because billions of dollars showed up. Seawalls, pump systems, elevated roads, constant repairs. Miami is buying time, expensive time. And that raises a quiet question. If Miami can spend billions to hold the ocean back, what happens to cities that can't? Move a little north. New York City, after Hurricane Sandy. New York learned a hard lesson. Subways flooded, power went out, entire neighborhoods were paralyzed. The response was not denial, it was investment. Massive coastal defense plans, storm surge barriers, redesigned waterfronts, projects that take decades and cost tens of billions. New York decided something very clearly: this city will be defended. Not perfectly, not forever, but aggressively. Now, across the Atlantic, the Netherlands, this country should not exist in its current form. Large parts of it are below sea level. Some areas sit several meters under the ocean. And yet, the Netherlands treats water not as a future threat, but as a permanent condition. Dikes, storm surge barriers, movable dams the size of cities. For centuries, they engineered survival. Here, the question is not, can we stop the sea? It's, how much are we willing to redesign ourselves to live with it? But not every historic city had that choice. Venice is beautiful, fragile, and slowly drowning. High tides now flood the city dozens of times each year, sometimes more. Italy built MOSE, a massive barrier system designed to protect Venice from extreme tides. It works. Sometimes, but it's expensive, complicated, and already struggling against higher and higher water levels. Venice feels like a compromise, not a victory. A city being held in place just long enough for the world to decide how much it's really worth. Now, shift continents. Jakarta. Jakarta is sinking faster than almost any major city on Earth. Not just because of the ocean, but because the ground itself is collapsing. Excessive groundwater pumping, heavy development, rising seas. Entire neighborhoods flood regularly. Some are already abandoned. Indonesia made a historic decision. Instead of saving Jakarta, it is moving its capital. Let that sink in. Not defending, not adapting, leaving. Jakarta represents a different answer to the same problem. Sometimes retreat is cheaper than resistance, and sometimes retreat is the only option left. So look at the pattern. Miami fights, New York fortifies, the Netherlands engineers, Venice negotiates, Jakarta retreats, same ocean. Very different outcomes. Which brings us back to the uncomfortable truth. Climate change does not affect all cities equally, but protection doesn't either. Money matters. Political importance matters. Global visibility matters. Some places are considered too important to lose. Others are quietly written off. And most of these decisions are not announced dramatically. They happen through budgets, through delayed repairs, through projects that are approved or never funded at all. By the time a city is officially declared lost, the choice was made years earlier. So when we ask which cities will disappear as sea levels rise, we're really asking something else. Who will be defended? Who will be adapted? And who will be left behind? This channel exists to observe those decisions. Not to panic, not to judge, just to understand how the world quietly redraws its maps, and this is only the beginning. So now the real question is this: if water keeps rising, if coastlines keep sinking? Why are some places being protected at all costs, while others are quietly written off? The answer is not geography, it is power. Let's go back to the Netherlands, because this is where the story changes. Most of the country sits below sea level, lower than Miami, lower than Jakarta in some places, lower than parts of Antarctica's coastline. Yet the Netherlands is not preparing to retreat, it is preparing to fight. For decades, the country has treated water as an enemy to engineer against. Massive sea walls, storm surge barriers, movable dams that close when the ocean rises, entire regions protected by systems that cost tens of billions of dollars, and still expanding. Not because the Netherlands is arrogant, but because it can afford to be stubborn. This is the key difference. When the Dutch build defenses, they are not reacting. They are planning centuries ahead. Their flood maps extend to the year 2200, not 2030, not 2050, 200 years forward. Now compare that with Jakarta. Jakarta is sinking faster than the sea is rising. Some neighborhoods drop more than 10 centimeters every year. The city floods constantly. Seawater pushes into rivers, into streets, into homes. Indonesia has plans too. A giant seawall, a new capital city, massive relocation projects. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Jakarta is not being saved, it is being replaced. The new capital is inland, far from the coast, far from the flooding. The people who can move will move. The people who cannot will stay. This is what abandonment looks like in the modern world. It does not arrive suddenly. There is no announcement, no moment where a city is officially declared lost. Investment slows, insurance disappears, infrastructure upgrades stop, and slowly, quietly, a place is left behind. Now look back at Miami. Miami is not being abandoned, at least not yet. Billions are spent raising roads, installing pumps, rebuilding drainage systems, protecting high-value neighborhoods, luxury condos, financial districts, tourist zones, the parts of the city that matter economically. But even in Miami, the pattern is visible. Protection is not equal. Some neighborhoods flood more often, some streets are raised, others are not. Some communities are protected, others are expected to adapt on their own. This is not a failure of engineering, it is a decision. Because saving a city is never about saving everyone, it is about saving what is considered valuable. Now zoom out. This pattern repeats across the world, from coastal Asia to parts of Africa to low-lying islands in the Pacific. Places with money build walls, places without money learn to live with loss or leave. This is why Antarctica matters in this story, not because people live there, but because it holds the switch. Antarctica's ice does not melt gradually, it collapses in thresholds. When certain ice shelves fail, sea levels do not rise evenly, they jump. And when that happens, the question is no longer which cities flood sometimes. The question becomes which cities are worth defending at all. This is the paradox. We often imagine climate change as a shared threat, something that affects everyone equally, but the reality is more selective, more political, more human. The future map of the world will not be drawn by water alone. It will be drawn by budgets, by priorities, by decisions made far from the coast. Some cities will survive below sea level because they are protected. Others will disappear above sea level because they are ignored. This is not about optimism or fear. It is about understanding the system, because once you see it, you start to recognize the signs. Where investment flows, where it stops, where governments defend, and where they quietly step back. And the most important question is not, will the water rise? It will. The real question is, when it does, who will be saved and who will be left behind? If you want to understand how the world is changing, not on the surface, but underneath, this channel exists for that. Subscribe to Behind the Map and keep watching, because the most important stories are not always the loudest ones.